Welcome. You've got Counterculture
with
Lujan.
He hails from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
You are listening to
Counterculture
with
Aaron Lujan.
This be called the Lujan virus.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots.
Protecting your kids from the indoctrination of the media.
I call on every man and woman of goodwill all over America today to come back home. Come home, America.
What's up, Facebook? It's September 25th, 2020. You are listening to Counterculture with Aaron Lujan, episode 65. The title of the podcast, Biden Collusion, Breonna Taylor's Justice, and the MSM ignores the CDC numbers. Forgive me for coming on so late, you guys. I had actually prepared for this last night. I have real life and wasn't able to do it this morning. Nothing exciting in terms of a good excuse other than I'm probably like you, just living a really busy life. I have 3 kids. I run a business. And I prepared for this podcast, and I didn't want to just not do it. I actually had planned a very special edition of Counterculture. I was able to get some software where I can actually, you don't have to look at me the entire time. I think that that's very boring. It's very one-dimensional. I think what will make this a lot more interesting is if you're able to see the articles, see the videos, hear what's happening, and I'm just sort of in a small box off to the corner, because what's most interesting is the actual news, not this muff. Although, shout out to the hairdresser. She does a great job. No disrespect in case you're watching, Denise. But you know what I'm saying. It's just very one-dimensional when you're just looking at me talk. Hey, what's up, Jason? Where's Hunter Biden? Why is he in hiding and not campaigning for his old man? I'm actually going to cover that right now, Jason. So thank you for asking, brother. Where were you at church, bro? I don't ever see you anymore, man. By the way, this is a free-flowing late-night counterculture. It's going to be a little calm. I'm not incredibly prepared. So if you guys want to, like Jason just did, engage, I'm happy to talk to you guys here in the chat section. If you guys have questions, if you guys want to have a conversation, shoot me something in the comment section. I'd be happy to do it. And by the way, Jason, if you don't want me to include you in the actual podcast that goes out as the podcast, I'm happy to cut you out. We could have a video version and we can have a podcast version. So if anybody wants to not be in the podcast but just kind of wants to have a offline conversation, as they say, you're welcome to leave a comment and let me know, hey, I want to have a question, I want to comment, I want to talk, but I just don't want to be in the podcast. Or if you want to be in the podcast, who cares? I digress. I've noticed I say a lot. Do you guys know how to stop saying something with a bad habit? Like, I thought of putting a rubber band on my wrist and snapping it every time I say So here I go again. I'm drinking a Blue Moon. It's I think it used to be a craft beer, but now it's like mainline beer. It's really good. This is my first one. I'm only gonna have one, guys, so I'm not gonna get like all drunk on the podcast. We don't do that. Yeah, where's Hunter Biden? He's hiding. He's hiding, man. Talk about collusion, huh? I mean, it's interesting how we spent hundreds, probably millions of dollars, I don't know, lots of money, on this Russian collusion with President Trump. And they tried so hard, investigation after investigation, media hyperventilating, and there was really nothing. And you actually have evidence of Joe Biden and his son colluding with the Russians, literally. The mayor of Moscow apparently is involved, and the ethics commission is going after this. I don't believe the left is going to address this. They're going to ignore it and pretend that it'll just go away so that they can beat Trump, which is hypocrisy, right? You literally accuse Trump of something. Your candidate is guilty of it. You ignore it. I mean, this is partisanship at a hyper level. Anybody else out there? Anybody watching? You want to just say hi in the chat section? I see that there's people watching. Shout out to my boy Jason for saying what's up. Does anybody else want to say hello? What are you guys doing tonight? This is what like 40-year-olds do, I guess, on Friday nights, right? 10 o'clock at night, have one beer, and talk about politics. Wow, have the times have changed. Anybody that's watching this that knew me 15, 20 years ago, I wouldn't be doing this, would I have? It would have been raging, man. So, I am going to cover the news. I got about 18 articles that I wanted to share with you. Too bad I can't get it up on the screen for you. But next week, I bought a monitor. So the reason why I'm not able to do what I had planned to do and show you guys the articles and the videos and me in the bottom corner is my monitor is not cooperating with me. It's not working. So I actually bought a new monitor yesterday. I've had the same monitor for 7 years. And great timing. Now, as I'm in the middle of the podcast, my monitor is working. What is that called? When Murphy's Law. If something's not supposed to work, it doesn't. So my top story, Jason, is actually what you brought up, which is out of the Daily Wire. Hunter Biden received millions from wife of ex-Moscow mayor, paid suspects allegedly tied to trafficking, had contacts with individuals linked to the Chinese military, Senate report alleges. This is from the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and the Committee on Finance. They launched an investigation over the concern about the sale of a U.S. company to a Chinese firm with ties to Hunter Biden a month before Congress was notified about a whistleblower complaint that was the catalyst for the Democrats' impeachment of President Trump. And the report outlined the following key findings from the investigation. So this is going to be interesting, you guys. So if you're not interested in reading this late, I'll read it for you. In early 2015, the former acting deputy chief of mission at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv, Ukraine, George Kent, raised concerns to officials in Vice President Joe Biden's office about the perception of a conflict of interest with respect to Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board. Burisma is the natural gas company that Hunter Biden was appointed to with no experience in the natural gas industry, making $40,000 a month. Kent's concerns went unaddressed, and in September 2016, he emphasized in an email to colleagues, quote, "Furthermore, the presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine." In October 2015, senior State Department official Amos Hochstein raised concerns with Vice President Biden as well as with Hunter Biden that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risked undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. Although Kent believed that Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board was awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine, the committees are only aware of two individuals, Kent and former U.S. Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs, Amos Hochstein, who raised concerns to Vice President Joe Biden or his staff. The awkwardness for Obama administration officials continued well past his presidency. Former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, but when asked about it in a town hall event in New Hampshire in 2019, Kerry falsely said, quote, "I had no knowledge about any of that. None. No. Evidence to the contrary is detailed in Section 5. So now Kerry's lying. Former Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs Victoria Nuland testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committees that Zlochevsky was an odious oligarch. However, in December 2015, instead of following U.S. objectives of confronting oligarchs, Vice President Biden's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Zlochevsky's and recommended he say, quote, "I'm not going to get into naming names or accusing individuals." Now here's the juicy part. Hunter Biden was serving on Burisma's board, supposedly consulting on corporate governance and transparency. Yeah, literally, you cannot make this up. When Zlochevsky allegedly paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's prosecutor general Yarema to, quote, shut the case against Zlovjevsky. Kent testified that his bribe occurred in December 2014, and after learning about it, he and resident legal advisor reported this allegation to the FBI. Hunter Biden was a U.S. Secret Service protectee from 2009 to 2014. A day before his last trip as a protectee, Time published an article describing Burisma's ramped-up lobbying efforts to U.S. officials and Hunter's involvement in Burisma's board. Before ending his protective detail, Hunter Biden received Secret Service protection on trips to multiple foreign locations, and it goes on to a number of cities. And in addition to the over $4 million paid by Burisma for Hunter Biden and Archer's board memberships, Hunter Biden, his family, and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with questionable backgrounds. Hunter received $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena Baturina, the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Hunter Biden opened a bank account with Gong Guangdong to fund a $100,000 global spending spree with James Biden and Sarah Biden. Hunter Biden had business associations with Yi Jianming, Gong Wendong, and other Chinese nationals linked to the communist government and the People's Liberation Army. Those associations resulted in millions of dollars in cash flow. Hunter Biden paid non-resident women who were nationals of Russia or other Eastern European countries who appeared to be linked to a, quote, Eastern European prostitution or human trafficking ring. Prostitution, the communist Chinese, wire transfers from Moscow, Russia. Son of the president getting $40,000 a month working at a natural gas company. The Biden name being invoked in the State Department to shut down these investigations. You're hearing this on Counterculture. It's on the Daily Wire. These are Senate reports that are coming out. Hunter Biden looks to be corrupt. His father will probably not mention this. But you're going to be told that Trump doesn't like brown people. My second article is out of Breitbart. Senate committee, Hunter Biden paid women linked to prostitution or human trafficking. I guess I already covered that. I didn't realize that article was there. Third article for the day is out of Gannett. Joe Biden endorsed Trump, exasperated by nearly 500 retired top military national security officials. So they blasted Donald Trump as not equal to the challenges of the job in a letter released Thursday. 489 members of a group called the National Security Leaders for Biden includes former Obama administration Defense Secretary Ash Carter, remember Leon Panetta, the former head of the CIA, former Navy Secretary and NASA Administrator Sarah O'Keefe, who served under the Bush administration, retired senior officials in the Air Force, a general named by Paul Selva, and a vice chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. I'm of the opinion this is a little bit different than veterans groups, than respectable admirals and generals. A lot of these people look like the political types. I don't think this is the same type of endorsement that Trump received recently when he had the former 500 military brass. These look more like politicos. So again, this is politics as usual. We're in election time, and we have a hit piece against the president. What I do find interesting, and I would have been able to show you this hadn't it been working, is Biden jokingly called U.S. troops stupid bastards in 2016. And I'm surprised that this is just getting surfaced now. Of course, the timing's great. And I'm going to try to play this for you, even though you're not able to see it. And this was Biden speaking with military in the crowd in the Middle East in March 2016 as a part of an effort to shore up Obama administration position in the region. Let's give it a listen.
One, I married Jill. And two, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I just want you to know that. Just clap for that, you stupid bastards.
Clap for that, you stupid bastards. Remember when the Atlantic come out with a hit piece lying about Trump, saying that he had called veterans losers and suckers to destroy his support from the veterans and the military and the pro-military voters? Well, we literally have Joe Biden on video calling military stupid bastards. If you guys are on the fence, if you guys are not aware of the bias in the media, there is case 5694. The Federalist Papers has my next article out. Kentucky AG exposes the left's 4 worst lies about Breonna Taylor's death. On Wednesday, as you know, the Attorney General of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, announced the grand jury report. Again, this wasn't a judge making the decision. This was a grand jury. The Taylor, 26-year-old black woman, was killed on March 13th on a no-knock warrant. The grand jury indicted Officer Brett Hankinson for wanton endangerment in Taylor's killing. The other officers were not issued charges. And, of course, the left said that justice wasn't done because they're of the opinion that those officers were guilty of murder. Well, we had a court case, and so I guess the assumption of the left is that the jury was racist. Well, the reality is that the evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in a proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. From there, Cameron explained that upon entering, one of the officers saw Taylor and her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, standing at the end of the hallway. This disproves the widely spread rumor that Taylor was asleep at the time of the shooting. According to the AG, after officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door, they decided to breach. After breaching the door, Sergeant Mattingly was the first and only officer to enter the residence. Sergeant Mattingly identified 2 individuals standing beside one another at the end of the hall, a male and a female. Obviously, Taylor was not asleep, given that she was seen standing in the hallway at the time of the shooting. So Taylor's boyfriend fired at officers first. So just to sum it off, officers busted into Breonna Taylor's house at a no-knock warrant. Okay, I'm sorry, I was reading a tweet by a leftist. Perhaps the most crucial fact about this case, repeatedly overlooked by the left, is that Walker was the first to open fire. Walker raised his gun and shot one of the officers in the leg. It was only after Walker's initial shot that officers returned fire. In Mattingly's statement, he says that the male was holding a gun, arms extended in a shooting stance. Sergeant Mattingly saw the man's gunfire, heard a boom, and immediately knew he was shot as a result of feeling heat in his upper thigh. Kenneth Walker fired the shot that hit Sergeant Mattingly, and there is no evidence to support that Sergeant Mattingly was hit by friendly fire from other officers. Mr. Walker admitted that he fired one shot and was the first to shoot. In addition to all the testimony, the ballistics report shows that the round that struck Sergeant Mattingly was fired from a 9mm handgun. The Louisville Metro Police Department officers officers fired 40 cal handguns. Lastly, the left continues to falsely assert that Taylor was murdered by the police officers who returned fire. Of the 3 officers who returned fire, 2 of them, Sergeant Mattingly and Officer Cosgrove, were found to be fully justified in doing so. The 3rd officer, Officer Hankinson, who wrongly fired blindly into the apartment, is not being charged with any form of homicide. Instead, his seemingly reckless actions garnered a charge of wanton endangerment. The Kentucky AG walked through why the grand jury had come to this conclusion based on the facts and evidence. And it goes on and on and on, you guys. I'm not going to read the entire article. We have an agenda. The left wants to politicize anytime any black criminal is shot upon by police officers. We are in the middle of a color revolution. If you are sober-minded and you are open-minded, you will read what the AG released today in Kentucky and what the grand jury's decision and how they arrived to it. To me, it seems like justice was served. It's very clear. Breonna Taylor was involved in drug dealing, and they had the police called on them for a reason, and the evidence shows that they fired first. the officers are in the right to defend themselves. And you don't help your case when you have a U-Haul seen distributing shields, potential weapons to Louisville rioters rented to Holly Zoller of Soros-connected Louisville Bail Project. It just goes to show you this entire Breonna Taylor event is a giant George Soros production. So apparently a pre-parked truck was loaded with shields painted with anti-police messages that contained umbrellas, gas masks, and other riot police. This showed up shortly after the grand jury made their decision. And of course, they supplied these folks with, the rioters, with what they needed to destroy Louisville. Now, the U-Haul, according to Gateway Pundit, is connected to Holly Zoller of the Louisville Bail Initiative, which is a group financed by George Soros. So, again, Gateway Pundit is reporting on this, you guys. The mainstream media will not. That's the reason why I come up here almost every day. It's the reason why it's after 10 o'clock at night. I could be spending time with my wife right now, hanging out, chilling. But I feel like this information is so important. And whoever's willing to listen, here you go. You're without excuse. And then, of course, we know that my next article was Kentucky grand jury indicts one of 3 officers. We already covered that. The Gateway Pundit has another article out that 2 Louisville officers were shot amid the Breonna Taylor protests. Fortunately, they're both alive. Let's pray that they recover. These police officers are risking their lives in this color revolution. They are truly... Remember back in the old days, during the April-May quarantine era of the COVID lockdowns, we were all worshiping the frontline workers, and we had a respect for people who had the courage to risk their lives for the public welfare. It's funny how in September we've forgotten those sentiments when it applies to police officers literally risking their lives on the streets, like yesterday getting shot at, 2 Louisville police officers being sent to the hospital. Yet we had all this virtue signaling in April and May about, the frontline workers were with you, and you could go to 7-Eleven and get a free coffee if you were a nurse or a doctor working in an emergency room because you were treating Cooties-19. Trump refuses to commit to a peaceful transition of power after Election Day, reports the communist news network CNN. Now, the reason I'm reporting this article from CNN isn't because I believe what CNN is trying to imply, which is that Trump is refusing to a peaceful transition. The implication is that if he loses, Trump is going to break the law and not allow for a peaceful transition of power. What Trump has been saying, and what this article doesn't place in its proper context, of course, it's CNN, is that Trump has placed a lot of doubt on the mail-in ballots. The mail-in ballots are ripe for corruption. Anybody, I think my 7-year-old who's in 2nd grade can understand this idea that if you were to submit something on a piece of paper and allow multiple people to get a hold of it, that it can be manipulated, it can be stolen, it can be changed, and therefore having a national mail-in election would be ripe for corruption. And so what Trump is essentially saying, and he's got to play a very fine line because his words will be used against him, is that he cannot say what he probably wants to say, in my opinion, which is the election, if we were to have a complete mail-in ballot election, that those ballots could be ripe for corruption, they could be stolen, and if the election is fraudulent, he's not going to accept a fraudulent election. That's essential, and I'm able to say that because I'm not running for president, but I believe that's what he wants to say. If this is a fraudulent election, why am I going to step down? That would be incredibly controversial for him to be able to say that. But CNN wants to put out articles preparing the people for the fact that they're going to lie, they're going to try to steal the election, and then say that Biden won and force him to step down. And so Trump's having to essentially say, I am not going to step down if it's fraudulent. So he's just not saying anything. He's keeping things very ambiguous, which is, I think, what he has to do considering the position that he's in. Incredible. If you were listening to some of the podcasts a few weeks ago, we learned about certain Soros initiatives that are preparing, Facebook's preparing to create this perception that the election will not be decided on the eve of November 3rd, and that it's going to be drawn out, and they're going to try to create doubt. And then within that doubt, there's going to be massive unrest, there's going to be massive demonstrations, and they're going to lie and insist that Trump lost the election. Order out of chaos, the Hegelian dialectic. I would suggest you research the Hegelian dialectic. It's the strategy that the globalists have been employing for hundreds of years throughout the planet, and it's at play right here in the good old US of A. My next article is out of Breitbart. U.S. Attorney, military ballots cast for Trump found discarded in Pennsylvania. So we're already seeing evidence of voter fraud. And of course, these are ballots that were for Trump that were found thrown away. The U.S. Attorney's Office, Middle District of Pennsylvania, has issued an updated statement Thursday regarding the discovery of discarded military mail-in ballots in Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, that were cast for President Trump. Of the 9 ballots that were discarded and then recovered, 7 were cast for Trump. 2 of the discarded ballots had been resealed inside their appropriate envelopes by Luzerne election staff prior to recovery by the FBI, and the contents of those 2 ballots are unknown. Several discarded military ballots cast for Trump have been recovered after federal authorities opened an unspecified investigation regarding mail-in ballots in that county. And then the U.S. Attorney's Office made a statement, and this just goes to show you that Trump is right. It's common sense. I mean, I remember, I think it was in 2012, in the Romney-Obama election in Ohio, there were people coming out in court saying, we saw U-Hauls leaving the county clerk's office, I think is where they house the votes, or the ballots. And these people were following these U-Hauls in 2012, and they were just driving to warehouses, and nobody knew who these drivers were. Nobody knew who these warehouses were, and nobody ended up knowing where these ballots were. So my recommendation is vote in person. My recommendation is to participate in exit polling, and check with your county to make sure that your votes were counted, and hold your people accountable. I'm registered, and I'm going to make sure that my ballots are counted. I think that's the wise thing to do at this point in time. Moving along, my next article is out of the Daily Wire, and I'm going to play this video for you because it's very interesting. Many of you probably heard of it. Vote him out. Trump and First Lady booed as they pay respects to Ginsburg. So Ginsburg, of course, needed to be honored. If you remember, the left was honoring the notorious RGB. She's this woman to be honored. She's the honorable one. So much honor needed to be paid to RGB that in the middle of her services, they took time to take an honor break, a break from honoring RGB, to boo the crap out of the First Lady and the President. And it's really disgusting. And I was talking to my wife about this today, and I asked her to kind of compare apples to apples. Imagine if we were at a family member's funeral, and at that family member's funeral, somebody was there that disagrees with me, that doesn't like my politics. And we're honoring and we're remembering this individual. I have nothing to do with the funeral. I'm just another attendee. And somebody in the crowd starts booing me and attacking me because they don't like my politics. That would be the opposite of why you're there at that funeral. You're clearly dishonoring the person that is being buried by interrupting and being very selfish and attacking one of the guests at the funeral. So I cannot take these sentiments sincerely when the left says, well, we want to honor RGB. So Trump is standing before RGB's casket. He's wearing a mask, which I find interesting. He swivels his hips a lot, I've noticed. I'm not sure if that's water running or what. 170,000 views. Vote him out. And then he turns around and leaves. He doesn't need to take that, considering all that he's done. Obama FBI was so worried about their illegal activity and coup attempt against Trump that they all went and... One second, guys. Hashtag Ghetto Podcast. Trump was right. Explosive new FBI text details internal furor over handling of crossfire hurricane investigation. If we remember, the FBI was involved in the illegal spying of then citizen Trump. And apparently it's coming out that the Obama officials that were involved, according to FBI notes that were disclosed in federal court filings today, that we all went and purchased professional liability insurance, one agent texted on January 10th, 2017. Professional liability insurance. These people knew they were engaging in crimes. They knew that they were breaking the law. And this is just more smoking gun evidence that the Obama era was incredibly corrupt. But of course, if you have any leftist friends, you would think that the man walks on water and he's goody two-shoes. The briefing of Trump was used as a pretext to legitimize the debunked dossier, which was funded by the DNC and the Clinton campaign, compiled by foreign intelligence officers working for a sanctioned Russian oligarch. So there you go. They were scared. The Daily Caller's got an article out. Trump announces he will sign Born Alive executive order. So this is very interesting. I'm not a big fan of executive orders. I think laws need to be passed by Congress. But, I mean, the rhetoric, the cultural leadership that Trump is taking, I'm all about it. He intends to sign the Born Alive executive order to protect babies born alive after failed abortions. He spoke virtually at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, where, of course, he said, the Catholics, amazing people, great people, and thanked religious Americans for their prayers for him and his wife. He was quoted as saying, the eternal truth that every child, born and unborn, is made in the image of God. I couldn't agree more. I will always protect the vital role of religion and prayer in American society, and I will always defend the sacred right to life, Trump said. Today I'm announcing that I will be signing the Born Alive executive order to ensure that all precious babies born alive, no matter their circumstances, receive the medical care they deserve. Quote, this is our sacrosanct moral duty. We are also increasing federal funding for the neonatal research to ensure that every child has the very best chance to thrive and grow. And of course, the March for Life president was just gushing over this. Donald Trump is the most pro-life president I think we have ever had in history. And don't have a lot of the details on what the executive order will call for, but apparently there will be, from what I can tell, reading in between the lines or some the assumptions that I'm making, that there will be criminal consequences to not taking all necessary measures to save the life of a baby who survives a botched abortion. Praise God. Fox News, California Governor Newsom executive order bans gas and diesel cars by 2035. It reminds me of a Babylon Bee article that said, state without electricity plans to only have cars that run on electricity. The reason Babylon Bee is so funny, you guys, is because it's based on truth, and these days a lot of truth. Quote, let us no longer be victims of geopolitical dictators that manipulate global markets, said the Joker, aka Gavin Newsom. Yeah, California, man. Not in touch with reality. Just not with us, breathing oxygen with 2 feet on planet Earth. None of this makes sense. It's all based on utopian, illogical, immature, virtue-signaled fluff. You know, the guy, Gavin Newsom, has got a killer tan and an awesome 90s haircut. You know, I don't know what to say. Pull away from the gas pumps, Newsom said. Let us no longer be victims. Of course, he's taking a stab at Donald Trump. From what my understanding is regarding electrical cars is that the entire industry is subsidized by taxpayer money. It is not a viable alternative in the free market. The only viable electric cars that we have that have proven to work in the free market are super expensive Teslas. You know, what happened to the Volt? Gone, right? Where are all the Priuses? And again, Priuses aren't purely electric cars. They're hybrids. The only electric vehicle that's actually been able to survive market is Tesla. And that is not affordable to the average person. But every time that the government tries to get involved in the free market, it just messes things up. I don't think this will be the one time that it will work. But the announcement's being made. I really don't think this is going to happen. The government is not big enough, is smaller than the free market. They don't have that kind of power. Now, this one's really juicy, guys. This should have been my lead article. I really like this one. The Center for Disease Control publishes new survival rates for COVID. The mainstream media goes silent. The U.S. government last week posted this, didn't get reported much, and they have the age groups on the left column and the survival rates on the right column. 0 to 19, you have a 99.997% chance of surviving COVID-19. Between the ages of 20 and 49, you have a 99.98% chance of survival. If you're between the ages of 50 to 69, you have a 99.5% chance of survival. If you're over the age of 70, 94.6%. So, there you go. There's a little cartoon with the voodoo doctor. She's got the lifesaver that says hydroxychloroquine. And to the right is the Democrat donkey. And she's holding a lifesaver over a ship. And you see all of these Americans, because they have these little American hats on, clearly all drowning. And the voodoo doctor wants to save them with a hydroxychloroquine. And the donkey says, don't throw that. And she says, why not? And the donkey says, it's not November 4th. So ask yourself, who benefits the most by deleting news of the cure before the election? Who benefits the most by deleting news of the cure before the election? So we've had the cure. It's been working in other countries. It's worked in the U.S. in hundreds, if not thousands of cases. The media doesn't want to talk about it. In fact, they censor the video that goes mega viral. The CDC comes out and says COVID-19 isn't that scary. This is the CDC, okay? This is the same entity that we're supposed to listen to. Remember, listen to the scientists. Listen to the experts. Wear a damn mask. Well, we shut down an entire economy with a survival rate that is 99.98% for a majority of the population. What a joke. If you guys are still wearing a mask, you're just afraid. I will wear it on very rare occasions. I mean, I am just done. I've been done. And you know what? Nobody says anything anymore. And today I actually saw another dude in the grocery store. I was at the grocery store and I saw this young kid without a mask. And I just want to be like, what's up, fam? You know, just give him a big hug and just kind of hold him for a minute. You know, just, can I hold you, bro? Nah, that'd be weird, man. Then I would have to actually legitimately get the police called on me. Coronavirus deaths 75% lower in nations using hydroxychloroquine. I love doing that doctor. Remember the frontline doctors? She was from Cameroon. She was the African black chick. Dude, I love that accent. I think I do it pretty good. What do you guys think? Is anybody even watching anymore? Sorry for my podcast listeners. I'm talking to the video fam. Well, it says that there's people in there, but everybody's all shy, except for my friend Jason. If you're still there, bro, you said what up in the beginning, and then I guess maybe you just got busy. You got a family, bro. I understand. So the WorldNet Daily is reporting the coronavirus deaths are 75% lower in nations using hydroxychloroquine. Epidemiologists issue urgent call to depoliticize medicine. What a great way of framing that. Depoliticize medicine. With media solemnly spotlighting the passing of 200,000 marks and deaths attributed to COVID-19. And if we all remember, the hospitals were getting paid for just saying it was COVID-19, even though they bumped their head on the bathroom floor. Why is the death rate 75% lower in many countries? Asked Dr. Jane Orient, Executive Director of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons. The reference is to a country-based analysis updated September 20th that shows a gap between countries that treated COVID-19 early or prophylactically with hydroxychloroquine and those like the U.S. who discourage or prohibit its use. And the answer to the question was found in a white paper published by the Economic Standard this month titled Hydroxychloroquine and the Burden of Proof, an urgent call to depoliticize medicine in the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the COVID-19 study shows that no subject has been more distorted than HCQ, a safe, versatile medicine that has treated hundreds of millions of people for numerous diseases for 7 decades. Remember when Cuomo and CNN was trying to lie and say, oh, hydroxychloroquine is dangerous, it's bad. Well, what about the last 7 decades and the hundreds of millions of people and the fact that it's been FDA approved, I think, for like 30 or 40 years? Yeah, so the article goes on and on, you guys. But apparently the takeaway was that the countries that have been using hydroxychloroquine as a preventative measure and as a treatment have fared well, to the tune of 75% lower deaths. So don't believe the mainstream media when they say, oh, well, we love you. You know, the same mainstream media that got us into the Iraq war that wiped out 1 million civilians, 1 million people were wiped off the face of the earth after 2003 and the invasion of Iraq. That same media is telling you that we want to give you a vaccine and we need to shut down your business and take away your freedoms so that we can stop this disease. While you're all being motivated by fear, because fear is one hell of a tool, the facts are proving the facts don't care about your feelings, and they're proving the fact with hard data and science, like 75% lower deaths with nations that use hydroxychloroquine. So my next article, second to last article, going super long today, but hey, I have nothing else to do. If you guys are watching this, God bless you. The Intercept, hunger in America, especially for children, has skyrocketed during COVID-19, data shows. So, unfortunately, some of the true side effects of this scamdemic, pandemic, is that hunger and human suffering has increased. The level of hunger in U.S. households have tripled between 2019 and August of this year, according to analysis of new data from the Census Bureau and the Department of Agriculture. And more alarming, the proportion of American children who sometimes do not have enough to eat is now as much as 14 times higher than it was last year. 14 times higher. Kids are hungry than they were before. The Agriculture Department conducts yearly studies on food insecurity, and with its report on 2019 released this month, began frequent household surveys in response to COVID-19 that include questions about hunger. And so this most recent census data shows that 10% of households said they sometimes or often did not have enough to eat within the past 7 days. And the levels of food insecurity in Black and Latino households are significantly higher. And even worse, while about 1% of adults with children said their children sometimes or often went hungry in 2019, between 9 and 14% of such adults said the same about their kids in August of 2020. You guys, think about the working poor. There's a huge segment of the American population that is a single mom household. She's working at McDonald's. She's working nights as a security guard. Sometimes her kids are left home alone because the culture no longer values fatherhood. Because of a corrupt criminal justice system, perhaps the man of the house is incarcerated. So people, when I say the working poor, this huge segment of the population, they're one paycheck away from living on the streets. They are living day to day. And a lot of these people are surviving on fast food. They're taking public transportation. And if you live in a major city like LA or like, what's up, Dave Salvatore? Sorry, guys. I just saw my boy in the chat section. This is Late Night Counterculture. Thanks for joining, bro. If you live in any of these cities, you guys have been around these people. You know these people. And they're just surviving. And anytime you introduce a pandemic, you shut down businesses, you're ending their jobs. They're no longer able to work at your restaurant and wait your tables. They're no longer busting your tables. They're no longer your security guard outside of the ATM machine at the bank, making $8, $9 an hour. So this COVID scamdemic, plandemic, the untold story, in my opinion, are the millions of families who've been devastated. And I always focused on those small business owners because I see them and I have to be in their offices on a daily basis because that's who I serve. That's how I make my living, is serving small business owners. But I will admit, I've forgotten the tens of millions of Americans, and let's not forget the third world outside of our borders, who are not eating because of this global scheme of Cooties 19. Very sad. Very, very sad. So let's not forget. So let's stop worrying about who's wearing a mask and who's not wearing a mask. Let's start asking some better questions like, what's happening to the working poor as a result? Hey, bro, keeping it real. Definitely a pandemic. Hey, bro, I got to keep it real, man. And then I'm just going to go ahead and end with this. This is the Washington Post. Fauci finally loses his patience with Rand Paul. I know, Dave, me and you, man, we're all about the Paul family, right? Rand Paul, thank God that he's in the Senate. Giving it to this what was that comic book? The guy with like the gigantic ears. That's what Fauci looks like to me. So I'm going to try to play this clip. Fauci kind of loses it, and he just makes some like off-the-cuff remarks that don't make any sense. He accused Rand Paul of misconstruing the data without any evidence. So I'm going to just play this video, but it's always fun to see leftists completely unhinged. And just bear with me, guys, as I try to find this stupid video. I'm on the Washington Post website, and I can't find the video. Here it is. So I'm going to play.
Second thoughts about your mitigation recommendations, considering the evidence that despite all of the things we've done in the U.S., our death rate is essentially worse than Sweden, equivalent to the less developed world that is unable to do any of the things that you've been promoting. Do you have any second thoughts? Are you willing to look at the data that countries that did very little actually have a lower death rate than the United States?
Senator, I'd be happy at a different time to sit down and go over detail. You've said a lot of different things. You've compared us to Sweden, and there are a lot of differences. And you said, well, there are a lot of differences between Sweden, but compare Sweden's death rate to other comparable Scandinavian countries. It's worse. So I don't think it's appropriate to compare Sweden with us. Yes, we have. I think in the beginning we've done things based on the knowledge we had at the time, and hopefully, and I am, and my colleagues are humble enough and modest enough to realize that as new data comes, you make different recommendations. But I don't regret saying that the only way we could have really stopped the explosion of infection was by essentially, I want to say shutting down. I mean, essentially having the physical separation and the kinds of recommendations that we've made.
You've been a big fan of Cuomo and the shutdown in New York. You've lauded New York for their policy. New York had the highest death rate in the world. How could we possibly be jumping up and down and saying, oh, Governor Cuomo did a great job? He had the worst death rate in the world.
Amen.
No, you misconstrued that, Senator, and you've done that repetitively in the past.
Repetitively.
They got hit very badly. They've made some mistakes. Right now, if you look at what's going on right now, the things that are going on in New York to get their test positivity 1% or less is because they are looking at the guidelines that we have put together from the task force of the 4 or 5 things of masks, social distancing, outdoors more than indoors, avoiding crowds, and washing hands.
Or they've developed enough community immunity that they're no longer having the pandemic because they have enough immunity in New York City to actually stop.
I challenge that, Senator, because I want, please, sir, I would like to be able to do this because this happens with Senator Rand all the time.
All the time.
You were not listening to what the director of the CDC said.
You're not listening.
That in New York, it's about 22%. If you believe 22% is herd immunity, I believe you're alone in that.
Oh, you're hot.
There's also the pre-existing immunity of those who have cross-reactivity, which is about a third of the public.
Rand Paul's a doctor.
Some studies, which would actually get you to about 2/3.
I'd like to talk to you about that also, because there was a study that recently came out that pre-existing immunity to coronaviruses that are common cold do not cross-react with the COVID-19.
Thank you, Senator Paul.
Yeah, my friend Dave just said, I can't believe Fauci defends New York response, zero accountability. What's up, George? I got some of my homies in the house on the stream. What's up, fool? What's up, guys? Good to see y'all. It's been a minute. Yeah, I agree with you, Dave. I can't believe Fauci defends New York's response. I mean, it's the data shows that we're the number one source of deaths. There were no more deaths anywhere else other than New York City, and you know, the city's a hellhole. I mean, obviously, not a lot of it's COVID. It's the loss of law and order, but I just think that Fauci's a political tool. I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys, what do you guys think Fauci's role in all of this is? Like, I don't really understand like why Trump still allows him to like be there, because I think Trump could get rid of him at any moment. Do you guys have any thoughts like why Fauci's still around, or I don't know. Well, it's been 50. If there's anybody else in the chat that wants to bring up anything, you guys are welcome to do that. I'm just kind of here hanging out. This is a chill out version of counterculture. Yeah, it's become a rat's nest, my friend said. Yeah, I think what's happening is, this is what my dad's opinion was, and I think it was very insightful. What he said is that Trump is playing 4D chess with these fools. Not his words, my words. He'll allow people like Fauci to be there to essentially let them hang themselves, right? To allow them to expose themselves. That if he just lets the dirty laundry air out long enough, people will realize that the laundry is dirty. And in the case of Fauci, he's perfect example, case in point, the video I just showed you, he's defending New York. And so now well-meaning, reasonable people will think, wait a second, we had the highest number of death rates in New York City. New York is in the toilet right now. Oh, Fauci doesn't have any more credibility anymore. So maybe he's not going to be accused of getting rid of people because of partisanship. I've heard Trump's IQ is really high, and the last 4 years he's proven to me that this dude is playing the game really well. And I think, like you, Dave, I wasn't a big supporter, fan of Trump in the beginning. I was actually really pessimistic about his presidency in 2016, and I'm going to do a special episode titled Why I'm Enthusiastically Voting for President Trump in 2020, unlike my hesitation in 2016. The proof is in the pudding. So unless you guys have anything else you'd like to add, I think I've gone long enough. It's been fun sharing the news with you guys. It's 10:45 Mountain, 9:45 Pacific. If there's anybody else out there that has anything to say, I'll give you guys a couple seconds to bring up any interesting issues. Otherwise, I might just shut it down and go spend time with the wifey. What do you guys think? Wow, this is funny. I was going to have this like amazing podcast lined up for you guys, and my monitor was just blinking nonstop. Wasn't working. I'm like, I can't have this podcast if I'm not able to actually see anything. And then sure enough, it's working now. And I just did a 55-minute podcast. Yes, Dave, please send me some COVID. And my buddy Daniel, whom I saw today, love you, bro. He's been sending me some stuff. And then random people that I apparently listen to the podcast have been sending me stuff. So please, guys, I mean, we are on the same side of this. I'm just learning this stuff with you guys. So if you guys get information, please send it my way. If you guys have show ideas, if you guys have news items that you want me to cover, send it to my Facebook, send it to my email. My email is posted. It's lujan.aaron@gmail.com. I use that email as my podcast email, lujan.aaron@gmail.com. You guys can send it there. If you have my phone number, text it to me. But it's been fun, you guys. So I think I'm going to sign out. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you. Love you guys. Appreciate the support. We live in crazy times. It's fun to chronicle this with you guys. Have a good night. Peace.